Dustin, not the only big name that we're hearing news out of over the last week. News from Flutter, Fox. We've had continuing discussions there because Fox is, of course, suing Flutter. We've talked about that over what the value of that option that Fox has to buy more is actually worth. And now, as we see the back and forth go on, Rupert Murdoch saying, well, we might pull FanDuel ads off Fox Sports, and then Flutter kind of responding in kind and saying, well, if we do an IPO in the U.S. with FanDuel, that FoxBet would be excluded from that. That's the most recent news, that last piece there. And within that, I thought was the more interesting piece of news where Flutter basically came out and said, yeah, you know what? FanDuel is, 80, 90% of what we do, and FoxBet's really just a small part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that they broke those numbers out. We didn't have a whole lot of, we see a little bit of the breakdown in numbers in some states, and that, I don't think there's any secret that FanDuel is the much bigger brand, but to be, 8, 9x of FoxBet, which it's a little jarring to see, especially knowing how much Fox puts how much promotion you get it on, just through their channels. Like you see, like they promote the Super 6 game. You get that all the time while you're watching NFL, right? And it's interesting. It feels like, I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know what you think, but it feels like we're headed toward it. How do you start not having a bad breakup right at this point? People are slinging mud at each other, and it's starting to look messy. And I guess you can work it out, but it starts to feel like we're headed toward a breakup that's irrevocable at this point almost.
Well, to your point, Dustin, there's another piece of news that we just got more information on yesterday where Fox Corp bought Outkick, the Clay Travis media outfit, and we know that FanDuel itself has kind of built its own little media empire. Again, it's all under the Flutter umbrella, at least for now. But a move like that almost gives you just a little bit of a word in the back of your head that says, well, is Fox kind of covering itself in case they end up outside of Flutter, where they do have another media arm that goes beyond what's under the standard Fox Corp? So I'm with you in that it can be salvaged, I think, depending on where the cooler heads really come in on this whole thing. But it's not the way that it seems to be escalating as we head toward arbitration between Fox and Flutter.
Yeah, and Fox wants to get the max out of it. Maybe it feels it's not getting the max out of all of this. Maybe it'd be better spun out. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, you're right. It does seem like a firewall when we heard that Outkick news. To me, I agree with that. It feels like I can't even list all the FanDuel partners, right?
Right.
It's another one or two every week, it seems like at this point. So we're like, yeah, you need, and Fox obviously can leverage the Fox brand to great effect. But this is another, they say the Outkick site does a lot of traffic for FanDuel and things like that. Who knows? I'm a bit of a seller on how much traffic they're sending to FanDuel, but. Who knows where else is going, but nothing as outsiders looking at this and just whispers in the background. It doesn't seem like we're headed toward kissing and making up, but there's time. Money and all sorts of things can change things behind the scenes.
If you dig back down to the beginnings of this, we asked from the very start with when the acquisition of Stars/FoxBet happened. We said, how are FanDuel and FoxBet going to coexist under the same umbrella with Flutter? And the answer we got at the time was, well, FanDuel will kind of be for the more serious player, and we'll kind of move toward the casual and rec player with Fox because of the TV partnership that you've mentioned. You can't watch an NFL game without having Terry Bradshaw's money shoved down your throat. So, you see that there has been this effort to market Fox for a while and have FanDuel at the same time, and obviously it's played out the way that it's played out, where FanDuel has certainly been by far the more profitable brands, generated the more revenue, and it never seemed to really jive in our heads how those two brands would coexist.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a hastening of all of that. But yeah, I mean, why, especially if you're not making you're putting a lot of effort into FoxBet and it's not getting a ton of revenue, right? So why don't you just dump all of that effort and people and into the FanDuel brand? Why, again, as outsiders looking at all this, that seems to make sense. Like you have a good brand, we said in the past, maybe having a secondary brand that's, but if you're only at 9% at this point of group revenue, and you have to and maybe you're cannibalizing yourself to some extent. I don't know, but it does feel like maybe you should just be putting all the eggs in one basket at this point, especially since that basket in FanDuel is a very good basket right now.
I mean, it's the U.S. market leader, and as you see MGM continue to rise and DraftKings continue to spend to hold its place, and Caesars come along, you really do look and say, well, what would you lose ultimately if you lost the FoxBet brand? It's not a brand that's caught on. And if you were advertising FanDuel on Fox, if on the NFL pregame show they were talking about FanDuel, it's not like you lose any brand awareness. In fact, you probably gain some brand awareness in the end. So it'll be fascinating. There's a lot that has to happen here and play out with that arbitration and, the price of that option to be determined and so on. So we'll be watching.